In today's digital landscape, ChatGPT stands out as a leader in the AI space, redefining how businesses engage with their audience. But how can businesses harness the power of ChatGPT to drive meaningful interactions and foster trust? Joining me is Brandon Tidd, lead solutions architect at 729 Solutions, where we will explore the strategies and success stories of brands leveraging ChatGPT to build authentic connections and establish trust in AI technology. Hey, Brandon, it's great to see you.
Hey, happy to be here as always.
So let's start things off with how you've seen businesses use ChatGPT. You got a few examples of that?
Yeah, so I actually want to take a step back even further and go back to the day the world changed, November 30th, 2022. So ChatGPT came out, and honestly, they didn't think anybody was going to take notice, OpenAI being they. They unveiled this technology, they pushed it to production and went and had beers. They thought maybe they'd get a press release on CNET or something like that. And what they ended up with was 100 million users in 6 weeks. It was the fastest tech adoption in history. And they never saw it coming. And what it did, because the technology for ChatGPT and ChatGPT 3, which is what they launched with, had been out for a couple of years in the tech space. And anybody who knew APIs and knew large language models could go in and register for a free account and play around in the playground behind the scenes. But what ChatGPT did was it democratized access to large language models for the first time and really made it so anybody could just have a conversation with the internet and all of the knowledge that it had amassed. And it was a very easy to use interface. It was a conversational interface. And so it was something that breeded familiarity with people, and it's something that caught on very, very quickly. And so what we've seen over the past couple of years or year and a half really has really been an acceleration of that trend of how can we take this technology that has typically been reserved for computers talking to computers and the people like us that know computer stuff and open it up to the masses and make it accessible to the masses. And so that's really what we're seeing with the onslaught of AI in everything. It's really more of how can we personalize the experience that you're having with our brand, with our company, with our tool, with our toaster, and make it so you can just have a conversation with it and it understands the context of that conversation.
In terms of ChatGPT and leveraging it from a business ops point of view or perspective, what have you seen out there?
As sad as it is to say, the most prevalent thing that we've seen out there is restrictions and blockers to access. Companies rapidly figured out that this was something that their team members and their staff members could use, and they may use it successfully. They may use it and unintentionally expose customer data or unintentionally expose trademark secrets to the data that AI is then being trained on, because every conversation you have with the free version of ChatGPT is subsequently trained on and subsequently fed back into the vacuum that is OpenAI that is trying to learn how people communicate. And so the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of corporations was to go to their HR department and very quickly probably use ChatGPT, ironically, to formulate a policy against using tools like ChatGPT and generative AI. The government just banned Microsoft Copilot from being used in government devices because it hallucinates. And that's something we've talked about previously, that people just don't trust the technology enough to let their employees use it in a official capacity. And I choose my words carefully there because, as you alluded to earlier, because it's available for free to anybody on the internet to use, there's nothing stopping John Q employee from grabbing their cell phone and downloading the ChatGPT app and doing work behind the scenes and making it the intern that nobody knows about. So Ethan Mollick, one of the visionaries and innovators on the space that speaks a lot about this, came out with a piece last summer called Setting Time on Fire and the Temptation of the Button. And he talks about the concept of secret agents and how everybody's using AI quietly, but they don't want to tell their boss that they're using it, either because they'll get in trouble because they're not supposed to be using it, or their fear is that it's making them so efficient that they're going to AI enhance themselves out of a job. And so what we see here is that the desire, once somebody understands what AI is capable of, generative AI is capable of, the desire to use it is almost overwhelming. And you can, to a certain extent, use ChatGPT, even the free version, in ways that are brand and data safe. So one of the things that we consult with Zendesk, and one of the things that we have started to introduce in terms of our workflows with somebody building a help center or a knowledge base from scratch, is to go to ChatGPT, describe your business generally. We are an X type of business. What's your elevator pitch, sans brand name? And then describe your typical customers who typically would use or potentially use your tools or your service. And then from there, ask ChatGPT to give you a list of 25 frequently asked questions and answers that it thinks that those type of customers would ask about that type of business. And the results are eye-opening, because it does 25 questions in about 25 seconds. But then also it really acts as a fantastic brainstorming partner that allows you to then iterate and customize that and say, okay, that one doesn't apply, but that's a really good idea to include that in our FAQ section. So we're starting to see inroads of generative AI in terms of shaping that content and shaping the storylines around how customers are working with you. And then from a marketing standpoint, it's a great feedback tool in terms of, hey, here's my press release, what's wrong with it? Or here's my marketing announcement about this new product that we're launching. Can you poke holes in it, or can you give me 3 pieces of feedback? Treating ChatGPT and the others, Microsoft Copilot and Claude is another one that's out there. Treating one of these models like an intern is one of the best pieces of advice I can give right now, because you don't trust the intern with trade secrets. You don't give, if you're Coke, you don't give the intern the recipe for Coke, but you might ask them to put some numbers into a spreadsheet. And once you take Google Gemini and integrate it into Google Sheets, it can take all of that and take what used to be half a day of data entry for an intern and turn it into a 30-second job of saying, make me a table with this data in it. There it goes. And so we're really starting to see businesses that are taking 2 paths. One is they're just shutting it down and saying, we don't want any part of that because we don't trust it. And businesses that are leaning in and saying, we want to push this to its limit, but do so in a way that is not compromising the safety integrity of our brand or our customers' data.
I want to lean into the businesses that are leaning into the technology. And I'm interested in hearing how businesses are using ChatGPT to engage customers and prospects. You had shown us a couple of examples in the GPT marketplace, I believe is what it's called on ChatGPT. I think was it AllTrails and Kayak. Talk to us about those.
So if you're using, by the way, they just made it so anybody can access ChatGPT without even logging in. It doesn't save your history if you're not logged in, but you could now, right now, as you're watching this video and listening to me babble on about AI, you can open a new tab and go to chat.openai.com and start having a conversation instantly with ChatGPT. Don't put any brand safe information in there, but you could at least have a conversation about it. And you can literally ask it anything about your business or anything about what's happening in the world, because ChatGPT is trained all the way through April of 2023 in the free version. Now, if you're like me and you have the pro version that costs $20 a month, it turns on extra features for you. One of those features is it can generate imagery using their DALL-E tool. It can write Python code using Code Interpreter. And it can also gives you access to what's called custom GPTs. So the GPT, by the way, we should have led with this, and maybe we can bring this back in. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Model. So when you're chatting with ChatGPT, what you're doing is essentially having a chat conversation with a generative. So it's not copying and pasting, it's generating unique content that's never been on the internet before, but that content is being generated from pre-trained information. Now, OpenAI went out and found as much information about the public internet as they could, but with ChatGPT 4, you could also upload your own content with ChatGPT Pro, which gives you access to ChatGPT 4. You could also upload your own content, like your HR policies and procedures manual. And what it allows you to do then is build a custom version of ChatGPT just around that data. So, for example, one of the things that I did as an early experiment was I uploaded Joe Biden's State of the Union address and made a custom GPT out of the transcript of that address. So if I missed the address, I could go back and I could read an article on CNN, or I could go to ChatGPT and open up my State of the Union GPT and just ask, hey, what did Joe Biden say about healthcare? Is he expanding Medicaid this year? And it would go back and it would look through all of the content that I gave it and put it into a conversation that it's having with me. And you can also do things like put your brand information in there. So one of the things that ChatGPT launched with when they launched their GPT store, which is kind of a weird name for it because there's no charge to use it once you pay the $20 a month. But AllTrails came out and said, okay, tell me about what your hike preferences is. And hike preferences are rather, and we will hit OpenAI's API and talk to ChatGPT on your behalf. And then we will go back and bring you information off of our server that's AllTrails, that we know exactly all the trails that are happening all around the world and where the best places are. And you can have a conversation with ChatGPT and AllTrails through ChatGPT that can return information that is specific to that brand. And we've played around with that a lot. We've tried to break it. We've tried to get it to give us bad recommendations, and it is very tight. The security on that one is very tight, so it doesn't hallucinate. So it's programmed to say if we take it too far out of bounds, it says, hey, that's really not my area of expertise. But I can tell you about trails. So let's keep the conversation focused on trails. And same thing with kayak. If you're trying to plan a trip, you can say something like, my girlfriend just broke up with me and I need to get out of town. I'm looking for someplace warm and sunny. Where should I go? And it'll make recommendations based on that content. Now, you can't really do that with a Google search. You can't really do that with a destination search on Kayak's own website. You can only do that through the generative AI piece inside of ChatGPT Pro by talking to this custom GPT. And so this is available for any company in the world to go out there and make their own custom GPT. And then over on the Microsoft side, which has Copilot, just a couple of weeks ago, they announced that you can do Copilot GPTs, which is kind of a rebranded version of custom GPTs in the ChatGPT store. The game changer that I found inside of Microsoft Copilot Studio is that you don't have to have a pro license to use the custom Copilot GPTs inside of Microsoft Copilot. If your school, if your company, if you as a personal account have access to Copilot, even the free version, and you have a link to one of these custom Copilot GPTs, then you can access this customized version of the tool that is built specifically for this purpose. And so I feel like this is going to be the new App Store. I feel like once this catches on and normalizes, that every company in the world is going to expect, or I should say, every customer in the world is going to expect a highly personalized conversational experience with the brands that they do business with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like the natural next step with the GPTs, the custom GPTs, in terms of, customer and prospect engagement for businesses, could be as a enhancement or an augmentation to their website. That question came up when you were showing us the Kayak and the AllTrails GPTs in the ChatGPT platform. And I can't remember who it was, but I think somebody said, well, why don't we just go to their website and look up all this information? Well, I think your response was, and I'm probably putting words in your mouth, but your response was, well, this is conversational.
I sat with this question for a while after our conversation about it, and it really comes down to two things. One, API costs, because there is a cost. It's called tokenization in these models, but there is a cost of doing business when you're chatting with a large language model, because it takes an incredible amount of processing power to really understand what the intent of that conversation is and to come back with a relevant and contextually appropriate response. And so by building on a platform like Copilot GPTs or custom GPTs inside of the OpenAI store, they're bearing the burden of that. They are responsible or on the hook for any charges that are generated from that. You just pay your $20 a month and you have access to the tool. For you to do that on your own website, it opens it up to a larger audience of anybody that uses your website, not necessarily people who are subscribed to these tools. So it potentially opens up a issue with the amount of content that's being generated. And there's a lot of research that has to go into that of how much traffic do you expect. But the bigger question here that I think isn't being asked is, why have an app for your phone when you have a website? Like, I could open up Kayak's website on my mobile browser and have a reasonably good, responsibly designed experience inside of my Google Chrome browser on my Android device. And yet there's a market for having an iPhone app and a Google Play app that is specific to Kayak and a different experience for those users that are using those tools already. And so I think that what we see here is the next innovation of people who are leaning in, people who are using ChatGPT, who are the power users, who know what a custom GPT is, who are playing around and using custom GPTs. And the Copilot users who are going to be introduced because it's just going to show up on their computer one day and they're going to go, what's this? In fact, Microsoft is so sure that this is the future that they've changed the keyboard for the first time in 30 years, and their new line of laptops is coming out with a Copilot button that's on the physical keyboard to access Copilot with one touch. And so once these folks start getting access and understanding the power and potential, they're going to start asking questions that are not only related to the Word document that they're accessing, but also they're probably going to ask it, what's good to do this weekend? Or what should I watch on Netflix tonight? And so we see this as an opportunity for brands to capture that market. And a quick aside, I did 2 searches for Honda, the automotive company, that I was trying to find information because we're a Honda family. We love Honda. And when I did a search in the walled garden of the custom GPT store, I found 2 custom GPTs that were built for Honda. One was somebody uploaded the PDF of a 2001 manual for a Honda Odyssey. So you could chat with the manual for a Honda Odyssey. And the other match was accounting by Rhonda, which did a name match on RHONDA. There was no presence for Honda in that store. So it's one of the first times that I've seen where there's a group of users that are actively engaging with generative AI, and the brands aren't there to meet them. And that's where I see us having the opportunity as 729 Solutions to come in and work with you to understand what your brand's needs are, not to necessarily put generative AI into all things in your business, but to make sure that you're showing up in the places that people are already having these generative conversations.
It's kind of like having an SEO optimized website and your site is a page 1 result, or certain pages on your website or on page 1. You want to be there, where people are searching for it, or at least in this case, asking about certain topics or whatever it might be. Let's wrap things up. What's your kind of 1 or 2 things that businesses should really be paying attention to with ChatGPT or Copilot for that matter?
I haven't mentioned them, but the runner up there is Google Gemini. depending on when this is pushed, we have either just had or just about to have Google's I/O, which is going to be entirely focused on, it's their developer conference, which is going to be entirely focused on Google Gemini, which used to be called Bard. All these companies have a huge branding problem when it comes to their AI tools. But when it comes to ChatGPT, Copilot, and Gemini, the important thing right now is not to be afraid of them, not to shy away or stick your head in the sand and be the ostrich that says, I'm just going to ignore this, because it's not going to go away. It's only going to increase in its accuracy and its influence in the buying decision and the customer journey. And it's those brands like AllTrails and Kayak that are early adopters. TripAdvisor now has AI built into their website where you can use AI to plan your trip. The travel industry is one of the early adopters for this. But as you go about your day, I want you to start thinking about areas of your business that are currently underserved by your website or underserved by your agent population in support, that, and not even necessarily customer service, just all things about your sales process, all things about your customer journey that could be enhanced by a conversational element. And so that's really the litmus test, is where can you enhance the customer journey with conversation? And then whether you do that by leveraging Zendesk and some of their new advanced AI capabilities, whether you work with us to build a custom GPT or a Copilot GPT inside of a place where people are already having the conversation, or whether we have a bespoke solution that takes an AI model and a large language model and builds it specifically around your data for either an internal or an external use case. It's the companies that are having a plan or making a plan to ingest AI into some parts of their business securely, safely, where it makes sense, that are going to win in the long run. And the other thing I'll say is go play. We are in the experimentation part of this right now, where if you've got somebody, this is one of the things that we're working with the current client on now, is they were curious about AI, but they weren't ready to invest and put anything behind it in terms of technology. But they wanted to know where it could impact their business. So what they did was they took one of their employees rather, that was really into AI, and they said, go out and play with ChatGPT. Don't give it any sensitive customer data, but go out and learn this tool and figure out how we can use it, and come back to us in 2 weeks and make a presentation to the leadership team about how we can use this in our business. And it's going to be those internal advocates that are really going to push this forward, because every company has somebody out there that is sitting on the sidelines just waiting for the opportunity to have that conversation with leadership, that is seething because they see a missed opportunity in their space. Like, oh my gosh, I'm using ChatGPT every day to do this, and it could help our business grow, and we're ignoring it because we're afraid it might hallucinate. That person is your best advocate for researching how the tool can be used. And then 729 Solutions can come in and help you deploy it safely.
And where can people go to learn more about leveraging ChatGPT or even just AI in general for their business? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, step one is to get familiar with the tools on your own by going to ChatGPT or copilot.microsoft.com. And the second thing is click the link in the description below to have a free consultation with us, and we can talk to you a little bit more about your personal use case, about where you see AI intersecting with your process and your customer journey, and what tool of the ones that we've mentioned makes the most sense.
Thanks as always, Brandon, for joining me. Great conversation. We'll see you next time.